All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Jon Jackson. I'm with a company called Global Neighbor. What we're trying to do is look at grain and cereal farmers and improve their profitability by attacking one of the biggest problems they have, which is in weed control. So this is the kind of the situation that's happening in this market. You got an aging labor force. It's not getting replaced. It also they operate right at the break-even point. So they're under a lot of profit pressure, and then small shifts or supply shifts or demand shifts really put them into a negative loss situation when they're making their grain. So that was evident really clear when we had this China dispute with the trade. You know, the exports that we sent over to China were all of a sudden disrupted. And then the value of the crop went down just enough to make all the farmers into the negative. So our goal here is to reduce those operating costs as well as to move them up in a higher value crop so that way they can avoid or move off that break-even point. So what's going on today, right? There's a disproportionate amount of effect. So there's this 4% weed pressure. So just imagine there's just 4% of the ground is covered by some kind of a weed. That makes a 15% yield loss. And because they operate so close to the break even, that's a 60% reduction in their net income. So in this market and in just the US, these farmers spend $6 billion annually on weed control, not on herbicides, but on equipment that is used for weed control. Also going on in the background, and you probably heard a lot about these herbicide-resistant weeds that are going on. So the practices are making things worse, right? They use the same herbicides, the weeds modify or adapt, and then they become resistant. Additionally, you may have heard about organic production, right? So organic production in cereal and small grain means a lot more labor. And so the labor content can be 3 to 5 times more. And so if you have no labor or you have pressure in the labor supply and you're trying to shift to organic, it just won't work. So and then additionally, when they're going out and harvesting the crop, they're coming out and they're sweeping up, especially in small grains. They're going to go out and they're going to pick up all the grain. They also pick up the weed seeds that persisted through their efforts. And so when they pick these up, they separate out the crop, and then they throw the weed seeds out the back end. So they just essentially redistribute the weed seeds back for next year's growth. Oh, I'm sorry. So, okay. So our solution, and I'm sorry that the pictures didn't come through, but this is where a combine is. So if you imagine, I don't know if you've seen these combines or if you guys are familiar with farming. These are large pieces of equipment. They're $350,000, $750,000, and they're out harvesting the grain. In the combine, there's these 2 paths of separation. They kind of get the bulk materials out through one path. But the other path through this called the sieves, they separate out the crop, the corn, the soybeans, and the wheat, and then the weed seeds themselves. And so right here, there's this subset of the back end of the combine that's putting out what we call chaff. Mixed in the chaff is pieces of leaves and small ground up stuff, but there's also all the weed seeds. What we're going to do is we're going to go in and grab that chaff, run it under a directed energy light source, which then makes those weed seeds unviable. So we take the chaff, we run it under the light, the seeds that are in there now can't grow next year into plants. And as a result, we reduce that weed pressure the next year. So, amazing. The directed energy, I talked a little bit about what that is. This is our technology. This is what we bring to the table. So a lot of folks who talk about directed energy are talking about lasers and single wavelength light. what we did is we started there, but then we realized that we needed a broader band or multiple wavelengths. And so what we do is we take different bands of wavelengths and we expose them into the seed, and then we make the seed think or we damage it. So some of it we signal the seed. So what we're going to do is try to make it grow out of season. So like in the fall, we're going to try to stimulate some of those. Then they're going to get hit by frost. And the other ones we're actually going to go ahead and damage. So that's kind of what's going on. All right, we have the farming community. They're under a lot of profit pressure. They operate really near break even. Their current practices are making their job harder, and their crop value is not at that peak. So our goal here is to move them forward off of that. And we're going to do that through what we're going to call the weed seed destroyer, like I explained with the combine on the back of it. The weed seed destroyer is the device that will take the chaff, run it under the lights, and make them unviable. For us, there's other techniques that are out there, and then there's also, these are the main players that are there. So there's interest in this area, but there's really not a good solution that's available on the market. So these are some of the solutions that are there. Some group here takes the chaff and they pulverize it and make it into this really a fine mesh and then blow it back out into the field. It takes 160 horsepower. It's an enormous undertaking. And if you've ever been in a farm field, one thing that happens is rocks jump up into the combine every once in a while, and that just destroys some of those things. These other techniques have been around for a long time, but no one really practices them. Less than 1% penetration in the U.S. market. It's generally because they're not very effective or not very convenient or not very viable. One of these was actually, someone's actually taking and burning, and this is actually a technique that came out of Australia. You know, they were on fire a lot last season. So, but they actually take the chaff and they would put it into a narrow row and then take propane torches and burn it. So that's how desperate people are to try to get these weed seeds from carrying over into the next year. So for us, we can improve the profitability by implementing this first product. The goal here, right, is we will eliminate some of those carryover weeds. So there's this thing called escape weeds, right? So when you're in producing the farm, and you'll look across soybean fields, and you'll see ones that are just like completely weed free, and then the one just a half mile down the road is just covered with ragweed. Like for instance, in 2019 we had bad ragweed. The difference there is the timing. This guy got his out 2 weeks earlier than this person. And so then their application and their technique was ill-timed because of either weather or equipment availability. And so this one had an escape weed. In this case, it was ragweed for around Ohio. What happens now is then those ragweed seeds, where one ragweed plant produces about 15,000 seeds, go back into the soil for next year to grow. And so it puts this pressure on and requires them to use more herbicides. So by us providing this piece of equipment, we can eliminate, or we can actually help them with that escape weed pressure. We can also then reduce the use of the herbicide. So instead of a multiple application, maybe they only have one if they don't have the carryover. And so we should be able to improve the profitability, right? So the goal here is always to kind of reduce that weed seed bank, which is what will carry over into the next year. So that's the situation. That's kind of our product. This is a little bit about who we are, right? So Global Neighbor, we've commercialized this directed energy technique. No one uses it else outside of us. We're the only one with a commercial product in the marketplace for using light to kill back plants and make weed seeds unviable. To date, we've had about $3.6 million in funding, and we're still running through that through 2020. And part of what we've done is when we set up our company and we started to tackle this area, immediately reached out to, we have like 8 farmers, from big to little, organic to GMO. So these guys represent, are a good cross-section of the market. A guy out in Iowa has 10,000 acres. The guy in Tip City has 800. So conventional all the way through, and also the influencers of that. So this gives us a chance as people who aren't in that market to say, okay, here's our product, here's our concept, this is what we're going to do. And they can also weigh in as far as whether it's needed, whether it's not needed, and guide that development. Wow. Sorry. So the so let's see. So funny. Not all the pictures came through, and some selection are always interesting. So it was a team picture, but over here we're introducing one of our products. So the goal here is that we have a team. We've worked together for a while. We've already been through the process of introducing a product. We have the last couple of years we had a handheld product in the marketplace for killing weeds with light called the Nature's App. That was our minimally viable product. We moved up that scale. Now we're introducing our full production product, which is called the Weed Erase. That will be in the market, hopefully to places nearby for you. This team here, we've already been through kind of the process, so we already kind of know how to make that happen. And so our timeline. Right now, we're working on a fieldable design, and we'll be looking at completing that design that we will build into a pilot. So essentially, we're kind of in the lab space, and then we go here. This would be what we'll put outside. So we'll go from that. We'll get it through we'll have a review with our farmers advisory. We'll review through the details, and then we'll start a pilot phase in 2021. And we look for, after the pilot phase where we're doing the direct selling with to the farmers, to then go to the dealer network that's out there for that sell the equipment and say, okay, well here's our product. This is what it does. Here's a bunch of our customers that already like it. Wouldn't this be great for you guys to carry? Following that, we'll look at OEM integrations. So the go-to-market strategy, first again, selling right to the farmers. So we're going to do direct sales ourselves. 20 units at $40,000 a piece, $800,000 of sales. So it's a comfortable way to get initial sales going. Also, we plan to outreach to the co-ops, county extension agents, which cover the Midwest, and are tasked there to bring new technology and techniques to farmers. We'll work phase 2, which will be getting that information to the dealer network, and then finally phase 3 into OEM integration. So the target market, as I mentioned, it's cereal small grain farming. It's just an enormous, any way you look at it, it's just an enormous market. Every country's first GDP is ag in some form or another. So as I mentioned here, just in the U.S., we're spending $6 billion in terms of equipment for weed control. And then our target here was combines. There's 640,000 operating combines in the U.S., Canada, and Europe. So it's an enormous opportunity for us to hit. Looking forward on this, we already have some kind of revenue going through, but this is the revenue rollout for what we would call the WDSD. And our goal here is to get $1.5 million in new equity so that we can reach self-sustaining, and then work for dealer sales in 2022 on that product. So that's where we sit. Our goal here, our next phase is here to raise that $1.5 million in equity. Use it for key hires, and to fill out the product development team and for marketing efforts. After that, we expect to be self-sustaining in the operation of the company. So that's what I had. Anybody have any questions?